Hello and welcome to this, the Crypto Club and Digital Assets weekly catch-up on Zoom. It is Sunday, the 25th of August 2024, and as is always the case, we never quite know what we're going to be talking about. It really depends upon who comes and joins us, so if you'd like to join us at a future session, take a look in the comments below and you'll see a link to help you to join a future session. We tend to talk about blockchains, DeFi, NFTs, ICOs, STOs, any other three-letter acronyms really. Sometimes talk about central bank digital currencies, digital asset tokenization, the metaverse, all sorts of things in development, all relating to crypto and blockchain and so on. The sessions are open to novices and experts alike, so if you're a beginner who's bewildered by all these buzzwords and phrases, come and join us and ask questions. If you're someone who's running a project and would like to share some more details, and come along and join us, and you can have a go at our Gone in 3 Minutes session where you've got 180 seconds to talk about your project, your initiative, your idea without the aid of slides or a pitch deck or anything. Just talk through what the project is and what you do. As I say, we never know quite what we're going to end up talking about, so I hope you find something of interest in this session. Do click on the like, the subscribe, click the little bell so you get reminded of future sessions. But more importantly, come along and join us at a future event. So with that, let's see who's going to come join us today. Elena, good evening to you.
Good evening to you too, Gary.
It looks like it's going to be a you and me show today.
It's possible. It's possible.
But they're sometimes the best ones. We discuss so many interesting things. That's good.
Yeah. Oh, I treasure those sessions.
Excellent. Well,
Yeah.
well, maybe someone else will join later on, but
Maybe. Yeah.
you never know what will end up.
How has your week been
It's
since
been,
the previous meeting?
yeah, it's been okay. So the crypto market's been quite lively. Bitcoin's been bouncing around. I think it was just over $60,000 last week. It's up to 64 now. It actually means it's up nearly 50% this year. I think it's 47% so far.
Compared to
To the beginning of this year.
the beginning to January.
Yeah. So in fact, I'll pull up a chart. I'll share with you. Because you always get people get really, really depressed by crypto prices when they see them bouncing around and that. And if we take a look at Bitcoin right now, so yeah, it's around about $64,000. We take a look at where it started at the beginning of the year. So back in January, it's around about 42,000 at one point. So 43 up to 64. So that's what, just short of 50% in a year.
That's impressive.
Yeah, and it's something that people don't always notice because people tend to look at cryptocurrencies and they tend to look more at these kind of charts where they're seeing activity going on and they think, oh, wow, it's going up, it's going down, or whatever. And they don't notice the longer term type trends. But then equally, you can have things like, Bitcoin today has been, fairly
It's written
stable
down.
within a range.
Hmm.
But it might have been hit a little bit. I don't know if you saw the news about one of the founders of
Yes.
Telegram
Yes.
being arrested in France, and that's dramatically hit Toncoin
The
as it's known.
Telegram.
Yeah,
Telegram currency.
yeah, yeah. That's right. So it's Telegram's cryptocurrency, Toncoin, and that knocked it significantly. It lost nearly 20% at one point. And what you tend to find
Yeah.
is that if one crypto gets a sudden whack, it can suddenly cascade onto lots of others. So you can see Toncoin, I think it's about 10% down or something now. But that can sometimes have it kind of like fell off a cliff when there was the arrest made in France. But that can sometimes have an effect on the market and everyone gets jitters and that. So we'll see anyway.
It can sometimes influence other currencies, but
That's right.
overall, Bitcoin is still 47% up compared to January. And
Exactly.
if we look at a longer period of time, let's say several years, 5, 10 years, we would be even more impressed.
Well, this is the thing. If you look at Bitcoin from about 2017, when it was heading towards around about $1,000, then anything that's grown from 1,000 to 60,000, it's a 60-fold increase in, what was that, 7 years or something? Yeah, about 7 years, which I don't know how people's pensions are doing, but 60-fold increase over 7 years is probably not bad. So,
Probably not.
this is not financial advice, because the other thing as well is it all depends on when you join. If you take a look at this chart here, you could have got into the action when crypto was trading around about 20,000, 21,000 mark a few years ago, and thought, oh wow, the only way is up, and then it collapsed and it took a while to recover. Or you could have bought in back in 2021 when it reached a peak of like $60,000, I think it made it up to, and again it collapsed. So crypto can do this. It's all about timing, really, and sometimes being in for the long term is the best way. But equally, some cryptocurrencies, the long term, they go to zero.
I was hoping you mentioned this word long term, because this is what we finished our last session last week with.
Yep.
And
Exactly right.
Today we still have a lot of time to talk about it in detail if we want.
Yeah. Although we've got JT's just joined us as well. So hey, JT. JT's staying quiet now, just in case the French intelligence services are watching out for any activities if he's been using Telegram.
I hope JT is not traveling to France.
Yeah. But you're right. It's interesting as well that the concept of long term changes depending upon what industry, what sector you're in, and everything. And I found it interesting. A few years ago, I was presenting at a maritime insurance conference. So this was underwriters and brokers who specialize in maritime insurance. So, insuring ships and cargoes and vessels and that. And they were asking me some questions, and I was saying how it is that in the startup community, the startup community is always thinking long term and this kind of thing. I said, but long term in the startup community is possibly 3 months or a year. Whereas in maritime insurance, which has been around for 350 years, long term is 20 years, 30 years type thing. So we use the term long term. We need to really quantify it at times as well. So if you're a day trader in a crypto space, what's long term? Is it a week?
A week?
A month? I don't know. Whereas, if you're a scalp trader where you're looking at all the minor increases and decreases, then long term might be 24 hours. It's kind of bizarre. We use these terms, but different people have got different concepts around them. So for crypto, given Bitcoin started in 2014, so about 11 years, if I remember correctly. So anything more than 11 years is obviously doesn't even register. So what is long term in the crypto world? I think of it in terms of previous cycles that we've been through. So when Bitcoin first started, as an example, and it was like trading either for zero or for a couple of cents, then obviously that's incredibly long term. And then when it started gaining a bit more, not quite mainstream, but early adopter stuff around 2014, that there was quite a transformation. Then 2016, when ICOs and STOs started kicking in, and that also led, there was a lot of development with Ethereum around then. I think Ethereum was between 2015 2017, it got exciting. So a lot of these developments have only happened in the last 10 years. So this whole concept of long term, if you're thinking about long term in terms of a pension or a mortgage, we're all thinking 20, 30 years or more. Whereas in crypto, it can't really mean longer than 10 years. So
It's true.
interesting. And then we have the metaverse. I don't know how does time distort itself in the metaverse? Any thoughts on that?
It's like Bitcoin in 2014.
Okay.
We still have a long way to go.
Yeah. And it's interesting as well. You look at some of the other developments that are going on. So I saw today there's an announcement, and JT will probably jump up at this one, about Sony and Sony introducing, I think it's an Ethereum-based layer 2 capability. Let's see if we can find that. There we go. Yeah. Sony to launch Ethereum layer 2 Sonium. And I suspect, I don't even know if it mentions it, but this is all about Sony beginning to integrate its consumer products into like blockchain capabilities. I wonder if they're going to start linking that in with the metaverse, because Sony obviously massive in the consumer electronics space, and
That would be very interesting.
yeah, and you got things like Sony Music, where we've got like a massive amount of digital assets in terms of archived music and that kind of thing. So I wonder if them having a blockchain type layer allows them to expand like a metaverse layer in some way, because that's certainly, I think, what South Korean mobile phone manufacturer and electronics manufacturer Samsung started doing. Samsung started doing some early investigation into crypto, and I think they were one of the first to announce that they were integrating an ability to be able to view NFTs within Samsung products. So if you had like a Samsung mobile phone or a Samsung TV, they were doing some stuff around NFTs. And I think they did some work as well. I'll have to go and check it into metaverse developments as well. So all interesting things.
All interesting things, yeah.
Yeah. So
we are still not there to have a metaverse like a space, where a virtual space where we all are and where we can see each other's face expressions and speak and communicate freely.
Yep.
Because the speed, the latency is not there yet. But all this, it's great to hear that Sony or Samsung are doing something towards this, because they are starting to make the elements of the metaverse real.
Yeah.
And then at some stage it will happen.
I think you're right. And again, it goes back to the analogy I've used many times in the past about the crypto world, is that it's a little bit like the gold rush in California in the late 1800s, early 1900s, where there was an absolute feverish rush to try and find, gold and make money and this kind of thing. And eventually it died away, but it left an infrastructure in place. It left the railroads, the houses, the buildings and everything, which were then developed further. And a lot of the California gold rush, I think, provided the infrastructure, which then allowed other industries to build up on. And I think it's the same with the metaverse, that there are kind of like the building blocks being put into place. And this is the thing I've said about crypto. If you think about, blockchains being like the railway lines, and cryptocurrencies kind of being like the trains, and then smart contracts being the tickets on the trains. Mm-hmm. I think that was one kind of concept I had. Then it means we've got all these different building blocks that, as they come together, it means nothing's quite fully there yet, but it's definitely getting there. So it'll be interesting to see how that continues to develop.
And all these elements you mentioned that start to collaborate and organize themselves into a system, I can compare it to a direction where the train goes.
Yeah,
But we don't have the final the destination yet,
but
obviously.
you're absolutely right, and it's all the various components coming together, and
Yeah.
it's sometimes when you put two things together, it's the combination of them generates something else. So just like in chemistry, sometimes getting two elements and sticking them together causes an explosion
Yes.
or generates a gas or whatever. It causes interesting, and it's the same with technology. And so it could well be that the
Yeah.
metaverse is kind of like a petri dish into which we're
Mhm.
putting various bits like blockchains, like digital assets, like marketing, branding there. And then you start throwing in other
Yeah.
things. So you look at AI. AI is the thing that everyone's still talking about, with particularly generative AI now. Well, start linking in things like there's a UK company, I think it's called Synesthesia, which is an AI video production company. So that they're producing things like if you're a company who wants to do some training, then you can produce a training video. And instead of having a human
Mm.
actor and a human script, they've got AI based actors who look like human beings and all this kind of thing. And I did some stuff a while ago just to demonstrate this in some stuff I was doing a while ago about you can actually get somebody who looks human to run a training course, and they can follow the script, and you wouldn't really know it's not a human being. Well, the likes of synesthesia are kind of taking that to the next level, where they're creating the ability for you to create, for you to generate, human-looking images as part of
Avatars.
videos and actually do videos. So this is why I think it was last year. I've forgotten his name now, but there's a big film producer in LA. I think sorry, it wasn't LA, it was Atlanta. And he's actually put one of his developments on hold. He was looking to expand and build, I think it was an 8 or 11 studio new facility. And he's put it on hold because he saw what some of the AI generated content was that was coming out. And he said, we're not going to need studios. You're going to be able to produce films which are going to be studio quality, but are all AI generated. So throw that into the mix with the metaverse, and you've now got this next thing. It's interesting you said about latency is something on the performance in that. Well, if you've got what's called edge-based compute, so rather than me firing a request which goes to a server, which does all crunching and produces the results and comes back, which is where the latency can come in. If I can generate that content locally, there's no latency, and then we can plug that into a metaverse in some way, then that kind of builds a real-time capability. So maybe we'll go on from this idea of like we were talking the other week about kind of like shopping malls in the metaverse where you're pulling goods and services and products and consume them there. Well, maybe that'll happen with our avatars and that kind of thing as well, where they'll go the next level.
That's true. And yes, it will happen. And yes, edge computing is the way to go. However, when we talk about people in America communicating with people in Australia, still the internet signal runs along the cables that go along the bottom of the ocean. So if we look at it from that perspective, even 10 or 20 milliseconds is detectable by a human.
Mhm.
So, and this is what I meant, that we still need our technology to develop a bit before we have the global metaverse.
Yeah. Well, this is where
But
again,
yes,
you're right, but this is again we start hitting the boundaries of physics, because at the moment, if we've got fiber optic networks, then the bits and the bytes are moving at the speed of light, and in theory, we can't go faster than the speed of light.
no, we can't.
There's some people who might argue that that's not necessarily true. But at the moment, we are kind of constrained by that. So this is where we can come into like, well, are the ways that we can shortcut things? So at the moment, if we've got a cable that routes all the way around the world, well, can you make that cable shorter? Or can you
Straighter?
Or straighter, yeah? Or can you do things like bounce the transmission off satellite and then bounce it from the satellite back down to Earth? Or instead of using radio waves, do it with light waves?
Yes. If we're talking about satellites, what about the clouds?
So
If there is cloud, then it can alter the speed even a little bit.
Yeah.
And also, do you know that the information moving inside of the fiber optics with the speed of light, the light beam bounces inside of the optic fiber, which makes it slightly slower than the speed of light.
Yeah.
So we need to overcome all these difficulties.
So this is where again we can think about things slightly differently, because you're right. So say you've got 100 megabyte file. Okay.
I got my sound working. Sorry, guys.
Oh, okay, JT. Thanks.
Yeah.
Hi, JT.
You can join in on this in a minute, because I'm sure you'll enjoy it. But Elaine, I think you've got a 100 megabyte file.
Yeah.
Well, there's actually a different way that you can make that travel faster. Okay. One is, as you say, you can have a shorter cable, or you can slice that 100 megabyte file up into 10 separate slices and send them in parallel and then recombine them again. So now all of a sudden it's not taking the time it takes to send a 100 megabyte file. It's taking 1/10 of that. Or you can use compression techniques or various other things. Or you can do, you think about what some websites do, and Google does this as well. You know the way in search engines where you start typing things and it's got like predictive text. Well, you could potentially have like an edge compute capability that starts predicting what it thinks it is you're going to be sending, and can kind of like make a bet on whether that's right, and therefore use its predicted result as opposed to the actual result. And that's kind of how I seem to remember that's how some TV used to work. That used to send some parts of a signal. So if you look at how TV transmissions work with the 625 lines and all this kind of thing, you've got concept like interpolation, which is where it doesn't actually send every single line. It just sends. Oh, sorry, my battery's going low, which is never good. Bear with me a moment. JT, join the conversation.
Sorry?
I'm saying, sorry, I just got a battery alert, which means that my laptop wasn't plugged in. So I was just suggesting you could join the conversation while I fixed it. It's all back now, I think.
So Gary, if we send 100 megabytes file divided into packets, what happens if some of them get lost along the way?
That's the way packets are designed. Yeah. So you've got going right back to the early network days of sending bits and bytes. You've got things like EDAC correction, which is error detection and correction, which is where you actually can do some maths to make sure that packets haven't been lost. So you think about, really simple thing that if you've split a file into 10, you can send it as block 1, block 2, block 3, block 4, and so on. And then when it gets to the other end, it can say, did I get all of the blocks? Did I get blocks 1 through to 10? Did I get them in the right order and everything? So at a packet level, and this is where you go back to really basic concepts like TCP/IP, which is what the internet is kind of like based on, does things like the packet structure allows for potentially errors and certainly error detection and error prevention now. So yeah, we've been there for years around that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, I was listening to your conversation, and you guys were talking about metaverse, yeah?
Mhm.
I think the biggest problem of metaverse, it's two, yeah? It's actually two things that need to be solved. One is the devices, yeah? It's very uncomfortable. Nobody can be with that for more than an hour, you know? This is a problem. You know, VR headsets have been, it's not the first time we are there, yeah? We've done it, when was it, 2011, 12?
I remember
Yeah.
Meta with was it the Oculus Rift?
It
Oculus?
was even before that, you know,
Yeah.
there was several trials before
Yep.
when they appeared, and then of course, you know, never took off because they're very uncomfortable. You're in the sitting room or whatever with a device that like that on your head. After 1 hour, is very uncomfortable, you know. Until design, ergonomics, everything is done properly, then I don't see it taking off. The second one, actually, it's three of them. Second one is edge computing, and I think you guys touch base on that. We're not there yet, you know. There needs to be a lot more processing power at the edge, you know. So we will get there. We might be closer than many think, yeah. And the third one is, if you guys just touch base on that, is information, speed of information, yeah. For that, I think the problem is solved. Is now trying to, or should I say, not productionize it, but you know, trying to what's the right word? Trying to make sure it's possible to build it in a way that is easy to deploy across the world. So that's quantum communications. Okay. So there's quantum networks already. China, I think, has one between Shanghai and Beijing. They wanted to build one between Beijing and CERN. And I don't think they like much the idea. Well, the guys at CERN loved it, you know, but I think the rest of Europe said, no, you can't build a quantum network with China and Europe, you know, obvious reasons, I think. Mainly security, basically, okay? So the quantum network is quite interesting because, you know, then we get into the quantum entanglement area, you know, which is what you need, really. I mean, there's the problem solved in terms of communications, you know. So the Chinese already have a quantum satellites, which is driving the Americans crazy because they can't break encryption on their communications anymore. Because what you're going to catch? There's nothing that goes in between, you know? There's nothing traveling the information. What happens at the source happens on the satellite at the same time. Yeah, that's what quantum entanglement is. So there's nothing to capture. It's really, really hard. And it makes networks, of course, safer, the communication safer, but it creates other problems, you know? So I think we might not see the appetite by certain countries like the US to actually get quantum communications going forward, you know?
It's a really good point. I was saying to Elena before about how, you know, when we get sometimes the law of physics challenges, so things like speed of light allegedly is the fastest we can go. There are sometimes ways around that. And exactly as you say, quantum entanglement is just, well, I was about to say it's another dimension, and it kind of is in a way that it's not using our straight line thinking of something has to go from A to B physically in some way. But all of a sudden with entanglement, the very concept that you can change the behavior of something in point A and it affects the behavior of something at point B with no apparent connection or anything, suddenly overcomes the geographic constraints of distance. So yeah, that's an interesting one.
And
Well, yeah,
it's a quite interesting. Very interesting what they're trying to do, the Chinese and the Americans as well. CERN is getting there as well, and UK things are being developing quite fast. Yeah, but I don't think the problem is that there's not much appetite to get it out there because of the reasons that I said.
Mhm.
How they're going to, in terms of security, it's a nightmare. So they're not very excited in pushing this technology forward.
But is it not another example of one of those things that it may be led by the military on the basis of it's very attractive in terms of the level of security in there, and also because they want to be first to be there in order to figure out how to break it. So it's like any new, it's like the arms race.
Well, they are there already.
Yeah.
They are there. It's not even a question. The question, what I'm saying is not from a national security perspective. They will do it. Yeah, it's much safer, of course, for them. I'm talking about a consumer-led. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So we're talking about metaverse and making it global and something usable. Yeah, that's what you guys were talking. And I was just saying there's a few problems. Some of them have been solved, but there's no appetite to kind of bring it to mainstream. Yeah,
Well,
that's the problem.
But again, maybe that's the whole thing. If you look at things that are done, again with the military, a lot of the stuff there is several generations ahead of anything that's available commercially. But now we're beginning to see some things that were developed by the military many years ago are now beginning to appear. Because it's always the thing, if the military are 2 to 3 generations on with whatever they're developing, then they're less concerned about that now old technology being commercialized in some way. So I wonder if it will be the same with things like these new communications methods, that you're right, there's no commercial appetite right now, but when it does become available, it gets declassified, or the military are onto the next big thing, whatever that is, then that's where it might become mainstream.
And then when it does become available and real and arrives and finally here, there is another problem. What if the majority of people just don't get interested?
Yep.
Like nowadays only a small amount of people would be interested in professional video gaming. So when the metaverse arrives, what are we going to do with the people who say, I don't believe in it? And with people who have never had anything to do with computer technologies. So will it only be for the few for the people who study it professionally?
So maybe, but if you think about that is true of many things. So in fact, gaming, commercial gaming or professional gaming, actually has got quite a big following. If you look at some of the games conferences that are held, and there are professional gamers, and they make money out of either competing, or I've seen some stuff where they'll teach you how to play games better and all this kind of thing. So there's a market. It is smaller than mainstream, but it's actually quite surprising just how big a market it actually is. And this whole thing of, well, what happens if people just aren't interested in it? Well, I've heard that apparently a while ago there's this thing that came about where you get a group of, it's usually young men, and you put them on a field and you give them this circular object and they have to kick it from one end to the other or something. I'm not quite sure what the deal is. And they use their feet on this ball, and apparently it's really popular. And you have to do a thing like score in a goal or something like that. I've got no interest in it. I don't get it. but there are millions of people who are into football. So I find it
That's true.
fascinating.
You're right.
Yeah,
You're right again.
yeah. So I think there is massive opportunity, and it comes down to really, for most people, does the new experience, and this is where JT made an interesting point before about VR headsets, and they become uncomfortable after a while, and they also have a tendency as well, if you're fully immersed in VR, for you to become quite nauseous. After about 20 minutes, you start feeling sick in there. But if it's something that at some point becomes sufficiently affordable and provides sufficient advantages to use it, then people will do it. And if that suddenly means that there's an opportunity that instead of having a Zoom meeting with colleagues around the world, then we go into a metaverse equivalent and we have a VR Zoom meeting and the quality of everything is improved and it stabilizes, then that might be the future. I still get it now where people say there's nothing to beat going into a room and having a whiteboard and drawing things up and the interaction and putting post-it notes up and all this kind of thing. And there's an element of truth to that. But if we could truly replicate that experience with VR, so instead of using a mouse to move post-it notes in Canva or whatever, if we could do it where it was a truly virtual experience with a headset and it feels as though you're physically next to people, and it's easy to do, then you might start doing it, particularly if it's affordable. Because if you think about it, I'm seeing a real growth at the moment in companies in the ESG reporting. So the whole, what is their carbon footprints? What is their environmental position? And one of the big contributors, unless you're in the manufacturing sector, one of the big contributors, particularly in financial services now, to the ESG profile is travel. Because if your staff are having to travel, then that incurs, carbon emissions and all sorts of stuff. And so companies are looking at how to reduce their ESG profile because that makes them more competitive, more acceptable to other organizations and that. So if they can start getting their staff to work remotely with headsets instead of having to travel, then that can be quite attractive. So these are all possibilities.
Would be, yeah. And you know what? If we were sitting all together in a little virtual cozy room having our meeting in the metaverse, we wouldn't even get nauseous because we would just be sitting and speaking. It's only if you see if your eyes tell you you're flying at the speed of light and your balance tells you you're not moving, that's when a person gets nauseous.
Yeah. And I've certainly seen that where I would recommend to anyone who's not experienced VR to borrow, beg, get hold of a VR headset and try the experience, because it's as though it taps into another place of your brain that has not been accessed for millennia or whatever. And that's why it is such a profound experience. It's almost like being on drugs, I presume. I'm saying that just in
I
case everyone...
presume you had to pause there a bit.
Yeah. A friend of mine tells me, apparently. Yeah. But you're right, the whole motion thing and the experience. And when you put a VR headset on and you can step around objects and all this kind of thing, it can be quite, as you say, nauseous experience. But when you get used to it, it does become a little bit easier. So we'll see where that goes. But I think it's all fascinating, and it always feels as though we're at the beginning of this journey, even though we've been on it for, well, in AI's case, nearing 60 years or something. Oh, sorry, 70 years. In crypto, 20 years. in VR. VR and AR has been around
Have you
20
watched
years. I guess.
the Three Body Problem?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Remember the VR headset? You remember the VR
That would
headset?
be wonderful. That would be great if we had headsets like that, if they were real.
Oh, it's gonna happen one day.
Yep. Yeah. Well, it might also be again. This is where I was describing before about how sometimes we have to overcome the laws of physics by tackling things in different ways. So you look about the challenges of a VR headset, as you say, it's bulky, it's weighty, blah 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 blah. So how about Neuralink, which is what Elon Musk is driving, where rather than having a headset, you just almost like have a USB connector straight into your brain, which allows direct connection, which then means you don't have this problem of headset and weight and perspiration and all that kind of thing. Maybe that's another way of plugging in directly. And I think I saw a video the other day. I think they've got their second Neuralink enabled patient now. I think it was, and they had him playing Counter-Strike, so a shoot 'em up game using the Neuralink connection as opposed to a keyboard and joystick. So there's definitely some interesting moves going on there as well. So maybe the metaverse will be we just plug in.
It's possible.
But meanwhile, we still can't sort out USB A and B.
Yeah.
It's a bit like how I often joke to people when I'm running a session around AI or something, and we always have problems with the Wi-Fi or the network. I'd say, we can't even get our printers to print straight away, and we're talking about all these advances in technology. So we shall see. JT, changing the subject completely. What's going on in the world? Anything of interest apart from Pavel being arrested in Le Bourget?
Yeah, the Rumble CEO now run away from Europe.
What's that?
The Rumble CEO.
Yeah. Didn't know about that one.
I posted that on James' group.
Okay.
I posted a link already to his Twitter, his X, sorry, where he says, "I'm gone from Europe."
Ooh.
So he ran away before he suffered the same fate. No?
Wow. It's
going nuts, man. It's the abuse. The thing is, people let the governments that they elected to abuse, these politicians continue to abuse, the power and getting more power and more. It's scary because it reminds me, if you know history, it really does remind 1932, in Germany. Everything it reminds, what has happened in Germany, at that time. And it's happening in Western countries. It's really scary. Russia already has it, China already has it, but I don't know, all this censoring is going to end up bad, I think,
It's certainly, it's interesting. Some people are, I know in the States, are asking me just how bad it is in the UK at the moment, because they're seeing all the stories about how it is that if you tweet about something, then you'll get arrested. And I think it was a UK minister, possibly, who said the other day that if you put certain things on social media, then the government will come after you, even if you're outside the UK. And I think it was a veiled threat at Elon Musk, because I think it was announced just before Musk hosted his Spaces session with Donald Trump. And yeah, you can see all sorts of things about, when government people start saying, well, we'll potentially come after you wherever you are in the world if you say certain things. And it wasn't even necessarily if they were illegal or illegal in that country or whatever. And I know, again, X is going through the problem at the moment. Is it in Brazil where they've had to withdraw their people or something because the government's told them to stop stop doing certain things which are technically not illegal in the States, I think it is. And in fact, possibly technically not illegal in Brazil. I can't remember the details, but you're right. There's certainly this sense of systematic state-level censorship. It is probably the politest way of describing it without getting a knock on the door shortly afterwards.
I can tell you one thing, yeah. If this continues as it is, anything you say, they'll come and get you, you know. So if there was a pandemic, for example, right now, oh my God, they will be arresting people left, right, and center. You know, if people said the same things they were saying in 2020 and 2021 and 2022, people now will be arrested, you know, in majority of countries, because they just you know, they put some laws. In the UK, there are some laws, what you can say and what you can't say. And parts of these laws across countries, Western countries mainly, are quite subjective.
Mm.
So it's up to their interpretation in many areas, you know. It's really, really scary what these guys are doing, you know. So, but again, the fault is people's fault. They vote on these guys. They keep them in power. They give, I don't know. I don't know how are we going to get out of it in the UK, to be truly honest, you know.
Well, it's certainly interesting again that people are now so concerned about many things as to whether that's like the ability to have privacy in communication or in your payments, which is where the crypto connection comes in. You know, one of the motivations for some people around crypto is the potential anonymity. It's the fact that you should be able to buy and sell things without anybody other than the buyer and seller necessarily knowing what that transaction is. And you know that's freedom of choice. It's freedom whatever. The problem
That's money.
Yeah,
that's money.
Yeah, but
if you get cash and you go to a shop, yeah, they don't know who you are. You pay with cash, you get the product. That's it. It's been operating for centuries.
Yeah, but again, the problem is that politicians start seizing on the whole. Oh well, you know, you only need to be anonymous if you're doing something bad. It's like, no, I just want to be private. You know, people have curtains on their bedrooms. They're not doing anything illegal, but they don't want to share what they're doing behind closed doors. And this is the thing that you can see. The thing with crypto is that a lot of the time that the official type thing from whether it's governments or agencies or whatever is, oh well, why do you want to be anonymous in your trading or your buying and selling? You know, you could be criminals or terrorists or whatever. It's like, well, you could be, but that doesn't mean you are. And it's an interesting line that we are or have crossed.
You presumed guilty first. Yeah, it's up to you to prove that you're not. Well, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, what was it? Minority Report. With again going back to films and movies and that, you talking about the three objects or whatever it was, that you've got Minority Report where there's this concept of pre-crime where you're being detained or arrested because it was recognized that you might be going to commit a crime as opposed to that you have. So yeah, we're definitely in an interesting world, definitely. So
yeah, and in crypto, it's going to affect crypto because once they cross that, they can target anything they want in crypto, literally anything. Because if you look really at concept of money is censorship resistant. It has always been.
Well, yeah? Cash is censorship resistant.
Cash, all right.
Yeah,
you know. It's censorship resistant, but you could say money as well.
Mm.
You could say, you know, but you're right. You know, the concept is cash has always been, but in the past, Yeah, when there was no cash, it was money, right?
Mhm.
There was only money. Yeah, and people had gold or people had pigs or whatever, you
Mhm.
know. So the currency was whatever you want it to be without before there was the concept of having cash, yeah,
Yep.
and coins being minted and so on. So currency could be anything. It could be pigs, it could be goats, it could be whatever, yeah. It has always been censorship resistant, you know,
Mhm.
for thousands of years. Only now they decided to do that because they created all of that. You have nothing to hide, which is a flawed argument, you know.
Mhm.
I think we had this conversation here before.
Yep.
And there's no point in touching base, but it's very flawed argument, you know, and they say it so that they can get more power continuously. It's all about power grabbing, nothing else.
They
And
never
once you get
they never let go of any of the power that they've grabbed.
exactly
So
when
so,
it's
yeah.
grabbed, that's the problem. It never goes away unless there is a dramatic change of some kind, like there was French Revolution, like was the end of World War II, whatever. You know, it has something dramatic to happen for that.
Is
Yeah.
that's a really interesting discussion about the potential, because again, this is where, you know, quantum entanglement, encryption, metaverse, cryptocurrencies, they're all paving the way to potential new ways in the future. So it's a nice way to finish off for the week, I think. So we'll leave it there. So
Okay.
folks, as always, thanks very much. Have a great day. For anyone who's watching, come and join us next time.
Yeah. See ya.
Thank
Bye.
you very
Bye.
much.
Bye for
Great
now.
session.
As
for now.
always, thank you. Bye now.
Yeah.
Bye.